Hello everyone. In this video, let's try to understand the differences between constant, as constant, and read only in the TypeScript. Firstly, to have a complete understanding of these differences, we need to understand the TypeScript compiler. What does it do? It does two operations. The first thing is it will do type checking. This is the first check, and later the TypeScript compiler will transpile the TypeScript code into the JavaScript. These are the two operations the TypeScript compiler does. Okay, these are the two things TypeScript compiler does. We need to understand these things. Okay, now I will uncomment this part of code. See, this left side is a TypeScript code I'm writing, and the right side, if you see, it is compiled and transpiling into the JavaScript, translating into the JavaScript. So this part is like JavaScript code. Now see, the constant is translated as a constant, but as constant, this part is not translated. It is not translated here. Why? Because this is simple. Because as constant and read only, these are the properties. They don't exist in JavaScript. So that is the reason when you try to translate this part of code into JavaScript, only this constant will be there because constant is available in the JavaScript. So that is translated, whereas as constant and read only are not translated. So these things like as constant and read only should be taken care at the time of type checking. Okay, not at the type of the translating the TypeScript to the JavaScript. Okay, fine. So now let's see what is the impact of the constant and as constant. So now let's understand the differences between constant and as constant. Firstly, so first thing, so if you have an array like this, okay, you have an array like this, and you have some values. So like if you declare something with a constant, okay, of course you can do some operations on it, like you can do push, pop, all these operations you can do, but only thing is you can't reassign it. You, it will prevent the reassignments. Okay, you can't assign a new reference array reference to this colors. Okay, this is an error. Fine. But you can do all the operations. You can insert the data, retrieve the data, all the operations. You can insert the data. Okay, no issues in that for the arrays or objects. So that is what the constant mean. Constant means yes, you can do whatever you want, but new references, it will not allow the new references. The assignment of the new references will not be allowed. This is what the constant. We know this. Now let's understand about the as constant. So this is also same as this, but one more thing we need to understand. See here, I'm not telling this as a constant, I'm telling this as a let. And now if you see at the end, we have declared it as a constant. It means we are telling that this array as constant. It means you can't do any of the operations on this like you did as a push here, right? But you can't do that. What happens here if you say as constant? So this becomes the type of read only. You can't do any operation. See the error we are getting, the property push does not exist on the type read only. This read only is not same as a read only, which we'll be discussing later. That is something different. When you define as a constant, this type becomes the read only. The type of this array becomes the read only. So as it is became read only, you can't do any of the other insertion or other operations. Like you're trying to insert some data, it will not happen this because as constant will make this type as a read only. So only you can access the data. Okay. For this, it says that it is a read only property. For this, it says that like you can't the same error like which we get for the constants because this is not an it prevents a reassignment same as a constant. One more thing it does is like it acts as a read only. Okay, if you want something to be constant and to act as a read only, then you can go with the as constant. Fine. So this is for the arrays. The same applies for the objects as well. So if you take this as an object, so I am declaring this as a constant. Okay, this is a car object, and you can happily modify the seats here. But if you don't want to modify the seats, okay, now I will say this object as constant. Okay, now see this becomes an error because this becomes now a read only. This object becomes a read only. You can access the data, but you can't modify the data. Fine. So this is a as constant, the same as arrays. Okay. Fine. So now let's understand. This is a impact of constant and as constant. These are some of the differences between constant and as constant for the objects and arrays. Fine. Now let's if we discuss about the read-only property. So this is something read-only property can be applied for the classes, interfaces, and the types. For all these things we can do. And where exactly we can use this read-only? Okay, because constant and as constant or dealing with most of the stuff where we can exactly do the things is like, see, if in this class, see, if you take any constant, see, if I take this constant, while I'm declaring this, I need to define the value as well. I need to assign some value. If you're declaring any of the variable, if with the constant, so the time of declaration only you need to assign the value. Yes, everyone knows about this, right? Related to the constant value you're declaring only, you need to assign the value. But in case if you don't want to do that, okay, and in that cases, you can make that property as read only. Okay, it means like with the read only property, what you can achieve is you can make this value. You no need to assign a value immediately. You don't want to assign this immediately. You want to assign this the time of constructor. Okay, the time of object creation or object instantiation. So you wanted to assign a value. Then you can do something like this. For the constants, what usually we do, when you declare as a constant, you need to assign the value. But for the read only, you no need to do that. Okay, you can do that in the constructor like this. And now if someone wants to modify the name like this, okay, if I'm trying to modify some name uh, to person dot name something, if I do, so it will give an error. If I modify something like this, it gives an error because this is a read only property. So that's the reason it gives an error. Fine. So that is one. Okay, I have not initialized it. Yes. Now we have created an object for this person. And in this person object, if some of the properties you don't want them to modify, so those of the properties you can mention as a read only. And you no need to assign the value immediately. You can assign them at the time of the constructor. So with the read only, these read only can help us for the object properties and for the fields, not only for the class. The same you can do for the interface and the types as well. For the interface, see, this would be the interface. And if you don't want this name to be modified, okay, you can mention that as a read only. So now what happens if I take an object, okay, in the name is Tim, and if you try to assign the name as a Bob, so it will not allow it. Okay, because that is a read-only property you mentioned. Whereas you can do something with the role. Okay, you can modify the role from admin to any of the other user role. You can do that. No issues with this property, exactly with this property. And if you want this property not to modify, you can mention that as a read-only. The same thing applies for the types as well. So read-only works in the same way for the class, interface, and the type. Just you need to add this read only property in front of this property. See, the same thing. If you want to modify, yep, here you will be getting an error. So this is a basic understanding of the differences between the constant, as constant, and the read only. Hope you understand the video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for the more videos. Thank you.